Greetings, this is the new Pan-African show, and this is your host, Qetselaworq Seifu. Today we have brought a guest, and our guest is Michael Bahiru, and I hope you'll stay with us till the end. We have some great information to pass to you. Welcome to Africa Show.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. So, Michael Bahiru. Now, the reason why we invited him today was because he has started something new. But before we get into that, I would like to talk to him about who Michael Bahiru is, and then we'll eventually get into African Artist Peace Initiative. So, with that said, who is Michael Bahiru?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm very happy to be here. So Michael Bahiru is just a young adult that was born and raised in Harar, Jagol specifically, and then I moved as a young boy to Addis for my education, and I studied medicine for my bachelor's, and I worked as a medical practitioner for about a year, just above a year. Then I went abroad to Holland to do my master's in international health. Then I came back and I've been here ever since. Throughout the years, it's not just academia, but what feeds my soul is what I ventured out into, or outwards, which are including skateboarding, music, and curating events, a little bit of a clothing line company, started doing a little bit of furniture, and just a guy that grew up with a lot of passions and desire to do more. And now I have went back into the academia side, but in a sense where it incorporates both the academia and the artistic world. So for me, I'm very happy to be venturing out on this new adventure. And in short, that would be me.
Nice, thank you. So before we get into the questions, I'm going to invite our audience to one of your choice songs. So we will play the song now. So now we'll get into African Artist Peace Initiative. So, what is AAPI?
So African Artist Peace Initiative, as the name implies, started as a peace initiative. It was basically arts for peace movement. It was started by people that worked in the African Union, and it was founded in the Gambia as an initiative, and it focused mainly on the culture of peace and promoting the culture of peace through arts and culture, and working on cultural diplomacy methods and promotion of peace through indigenous cultures, cinema for peace, theater for peace, and it did several types of peace initiative works throughout Africa, and expanded as an initiative within the AU right now in more than 30 countries in Africa. And for the last 5 years, since 2015, annually there were peace conferences being held, peace ambassador training programs, recruitment, and peace reconciliation dialogues, and promotion of indigenous ways of promoting peace or conflict resolution. And now, since the age of COVID and conflict within the country for the last 2 years, although it has been idle, it has been doing some homework and different types of other reconciliation efforts in conflict-affected areas, gender-based violence, mental health, and now, as of 2022, we are doing the groundworks to relaunch as a registered civil society organization within the AU in Ethiopia, and expand the network regionally towards East Africa, and then connect all 33 member countries and do something bigger. So that's what API is, or African Artist Peace Initiative is. But what we do in the name of peace and arts for peace can connect to any subsectors, like agriculture, economics, health for peace. That's what API does.
What's arts for peace? What exactly do you mean when you say arts for peace?
There's a huge element of peace in arts. If you ask any artist, some artists would say the type of art that they do is their therapy. So in API, we don't define just paintings and music arts. We consider anybody an artist as long as they're the master of their craft. It could be an academician, but as long as they're mastering it, they're an artist to their calling, you know. So some people master a certain craft, whether it's for money or for passion, as a form of therapy, as a form of getting away from the world, as a form of keeping up with the structure of life, discipline, and all of those are peace-seeking behaviors. They are reconciliation and self-assurance, self-confidence that give you inner peace. There is a saying that goes, hurt people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us through life experience trauma. And people that don't find it within themselves to find healing from that trauma, mostly than few, end up hurting other people or their society in general. So arts is a way of expressing that trauma and experiences in a very creative way, in your own craft, and promoting inner peace for yourself. And then you radiate that peace towards the outer world, and everybody around you becomes happy. So the role of arts in bringing peace. There are very simple cliche examples. It could be a music concert, a football match. Ethiopia is a very good example because we have excellent runners. So when we have the Olympics, all the differences in 80 nations and nationalities for a second just gets forgotten, and we come together for that element of sense of belongingness, you know. That is what technically what we call art is, and art for peace is. So if we nurture that, and if we acknowledge it first, and we inject a few efforts and networkings and workshops to amplify the effect art has in promoting peace and the culture of peace, then we're strong believers that there could be sustainable peace in the world, in Africa.
So why is it important to be creative in peace building?
I'll begin with the term creative because it means to create. And this is an innovative way of contextualizing what we already know about peace, understanding what we want about peace, and then integrating the two to come up with something that's palatable and relatable to the people that we're preaching peace to, so that they will have a sense of ownership. So we could use examples of indigenous cultures in Ethiopia, such as the Gada system, or in the Gurage there's the Yojoka Kecha conflict resolution mechanisms. So in the work that we do, if we have those knowledges, and presumably if we're doing a peace project in Gurage zone, and we creatively contextualize our project into what is already existing, then it will create a sense of ownership in the community. So it goes through in the metropolitan cities as well. There is an exponentially progressive change in mentality and perceptions in general, especially with the new generation. There's technology, there's everything. So we need to be creative enough into how we can integrate the promotion of peace with the ever so changing ways of the world. So creativity, that's how we see creativity in peace.
So now we go to agriculture, but before we go to agriculture, I want to invite a song. We stand for Africa.
We stand for Africa.
Currently, as you know, we are going through our own transformation.
All right.
So within that transformation, How does Happy intend on building peace amongst our own people? Currently, we have a very big situation. So you working with API actually kind of helps for our own issues.
Yeah.
So have you thought of doing anything with our own people currently?
Yes, absolutely. It helps that I actually studied medicine, because in medicine, when we face a patient, there's something that we say. Just listen, and the history that you get from the patient is already about 90% of the diagnosis. So the physical, the touching him, the x-rays and everything just amount to 10%. So if you really listen, you get to the root of the problem. So how API plans to actually address, of course we do plan to address peace starts from within, and this is an API Ethiopia branch. So this is about Ethiopia. So country-wise, and also in different sub-regions all across east, west, south, north, what we plan to do is, first, we just listen. Because it's not just this war, but our people have gone through a lot. And there hasn't really been a platform that entertains the problems of many, as opposed, as opposed to very, very few. So we plan to listen and engage in dialogues and get to the root of the problem. So a very good example is recently there is an education reform that has decided to integrate different types of indigenous languages within the curriculum of elementary schools. So me growing up, for example, I spoke about 4 languages, Hadarinya, Orominya, Amarinya. And what that teaches you is, whenever you go outside of your hometown and you encounter a different language speaking person, they don't become foreign for you. And you don't even entertain the difference part, because already there is some sort of relatability. And because of that, a lot of Ethiopians tend to feel understood when you speak their language. And they open up and they tell you exactly what the root of the problem is. And you expand that into a community. I mean, sub-regional, it could be one single kabale or warada, and then you expand it into a city-wise dialogue. And it's going to be a lot of contradicting stories, but the main thing as API, or as an organization like API, what I believe we can do is, there should never be a right or wrong, or a bigger suffering and a lesser suffering than one other than the other. So what we plan to do is just engage, listen, and take everybody's sorrow and worry and concern into account. And as soon as you do that, actually right after the dialogue, the solution will start revealing itself among the community. And I think that's the main strategy. And the second one is, we tend to, as humans, we tend to focus on the negatives mostly. There hasn't been enough amplification of the positives. So we can also focus on amplifying the positive effects of peace elsewhere, the positive effects of peace dialogues everywhere, the positive effects of arts for peace everywhere. It could be a simple comment from a community member as to how a certain art show for peace made him feel or her feel. A cultural program, a cultural diplomacy conference made them feel. And we can amplify those voices and use them as an example elsewhere in the region of the country to make that happen. And the third is, who was it that said, it's not just the good deeds of the good people, but also the evil of the bad people, but it's also the silence of the good people, is the right saying, I think. So whoever is considered the good people, whether it's an organization, an NGO, a government body, an individual, we also need to engage in creating peace ambassadors from the arts community, from the governmental, non-governmental community, and engage them in actually doing something on the ground. Work on making sure that there is no resource exhaustion. Everything is harmonized and people know what's going on in the country, and just be the platform for a really big movement towards promoting peace through cultural diplomacy.
So now going back to our agriculture sustainability question. How does agriculture sustainability contribute to peace?
I'm going to simplify to simple human nature. If you create a need in society, then you can control them. That's how neocolonialism work. I mean, you create a need and those people are in need, but you have the means to those needs. You have the food, the medicine, the everything. So you create an aid system where you can easily control people. But people who have basic needs fulfilled, like medicine, shelter, education, food, all of those fulfilled, and societies where the social class gap has been near eliminated, rarely have needs, I mean basic needs. So they rarely feel the need to go into conflict, you know what I mean? So when you have needs created, you go seeking out an extra land because you don't have rain this time, so you go beyond your way and you go beyond your border, and then that creates conflict and everything. But through sustainable agriculture, I mean, Ethiopia, the majority of Ethiopians are farmers and livestock farmers as well. So if you focus on making sure they have a sustainable method or plan to maintain a certain crop yield, and you eliminate that food need, and you educate them on irrigation, business, how to sell their crops, then you can really minimize their basic needs. And they will also have a sense of ownership to where they are, and they will never leave, like looking for jobs in Addis as taxi drivers or whatever. And it will also boost the economy, and that way people will find peace. It's as simple as them being happy about their lives, about their agriculture.
How is health a peace issue? Now, with health, we're going to also put mental health, so you can actually answer both questions.
Absolutely. I mean, health is such a, I mean, the actual WHO definition of health is not just being sick. It's a well-being of your body, your social, emotional lifestyle. In general,
every part
it's every part of it.
It's a package.
And mental health is also a huge part of it. So I'm going to go back to my previous point where I said, hurt people. And this is something that is really overlooked in our society, in every society in the world. There's so much childhood trauma, family trauma, like, you know, work trauma, or even physical trauma that people don't really address. Especially
now we have COVID, by the way.
Exactly. The locked up situation, the quarantine situations, all those things are stresses in life, and they're unhealthy things. And people don't usually address them. And especially in Ethiopia, when you come to mental health, we have really derogatory terms towards mentally ill people. We have less than par understanding of what mental health is. It is being worked on, but it's still such a huge area that we lack in, you know. There are a lot of awareness campaigns and educations, community educations that are being given, but it's still a huge issue. And that is very simple to understand when that can factor into how you can lose your peace.
Right.
It starts with inner peace, right? You lose your peace. You're sick and you don't have a good health coverage plan, or, you know, universal health coverage or something like that. And automatically you know that you're going to have to be able to afford to pay for your medical services in order for you to get back to what you consider your normal state or where you should be. And that creates a huge disturbance in the peace. And you'll have non-peaceful citizens that don't believe in the health system, that don't believe in, let's say, a governing body, that don't believe in their community. And this actually expands into the community. So the community cannot even help each other. And the other thing is, what I would actually like to mention here, health is not about treatment. Health is about prevention. So in general, medicine should also be about prevention. When you speak of public health, you speak about prevention of diseases as opposed to treating them. And being an Ethiopian and an African, we already know we have our lifestyle. any peace-loving person would love to be healthy, mentally, emotionally, environmentally, you know, and prevention is better than cure, always.
Yeah.
And as we know, we're very, very blessed with so many medicinal plants. Our lifestyle, if we take Ethiopia for example, even through ancient religions like the Orthodox, we fast about more than 200 days in a year. And that's already a vegan lifestyle, which is electric food. So we don't really get sick that much. So when there's no health, when there's alcoholism and substance abuse and everything, you lose your mental health. That means you lose the peace and you become a nuisance to yourself and to your society. So health is actually very, very important.
Yeah, that it is. But then health and mental health, to me, even though they're both, you know, it's something to do with somebody's health, mental health is deeper.
Absolutely.
Because, like you said, people don't usually talk about it. And if somebody has a problem, people hide them, or they don't, you know, take them to see somebody,
It's
to
a
see a
taboo.
doctor, or exactly. So I feel like it's even hard to find people that are in that situation, not only for what we're talking about, but for even just trying to help these people. How do you even find these people is one of my questions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so this is the API being a central governing body or a central implementing body. This is one of the perks that I would say we have, because it is an initiative from the African Union and it is a country branch. So we do have a network of organizations, civil society organizations, or it could be hospitals, not just in Ethiopia, but East Africa and throughout Africa. And we can really work on bringing people together, even if it's in Ethiopia. We can approach hospitals, we can approach elderly houses like Macedonia, and we can find those people. And that it's not a task upon us. It's upon us to bring these networks together. Yes. But we do have the resources and the tools to bring people together and find those people and make them connect, not just making those people better or finding them like a better treatment center, but also connecting that mental health with the concept of peace and how important it is for peace. Because there's so many examples that we can use with mentally ill people and how the peace has been disturbed, from neighborhoods to countries.
How do you build peace? Through entrepreneurship.
So entrepreneurship, I remember I did one project on entrepreneurship, not really a project, but I wrote one document, like a proposal. And so it's such a vast thing. Anybody can be an entrepreneur, right? And when I was doing that proposal, a lot of the people young people that I talked to, were very innovative. They're very tech savvy. So a lot of them were coming to me about tech stuff, like apps, websites, e-shops, and whatever. And interestingly enough, two of them were talking about a peace app. So it's basically like an encyclopedia, but it would have lists of countries, African countries, with dates of where the conflict started, the kind of peace efforts that was made,
Wow.
the stakeholders or companies that were involved in it,
Right.
and then the outcome and the current progress.
That's lovely.
Yeah. So that's why I say entrepreneurship is such a huge thing. The other thing is, so for example, being a business hub, a business incubator, is also being an entrepreneur. So you might not have a business, but you can own many, you can incubate many businesses. You could just inject a little bit of finances in them. So let's say you go to the southern region of Ethiopia, or the east, or wherever, and you just choose little tribes where you've heard like there's internal conflicts, whatever, and you just find out, you do a focus group discussion, and you find a few pockets of entrepreneurs. It could be like weavers, it could be pottery makers, and you don't have to move them to Addis. Where they are, you just inject a little finance and better equipment, and you tell them, you got to make this in 3 months, 6 months. That is a simple way of keeping the youth busy. They forget about their conflicts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're at peace.
Exactly, they're at peace. And now
the
they're
whole idea.
working. That's the whole idea. And then you document that, you promote that, and you increase the capacity, you magnify it. And you increase the size and you scale it up into a national level. And that could be one chapter called Entrepreneurship and Peace.
Has AAPI ever done that in other African countries?
Not that I'm
Yeah,
aware of. Yeah,
But it's something you'd like to do?
absolutely.
Okay. So now we go to our third song.
Fun fact,
Yeah?
I grew up with that kid.
Yeah? So the name on here is Ramzi Salah,
Yes.
Harariye.
If he ever sees this interview, hello Ramzi, I'm so proud of you.
So my next question is, the African Artist Peace Initiative intends to make a unique contribution to peace advocacy and education through the creative art. How do you intend on doing this?
When it comes to education, you're talking about basically the next generation. So I'm gonna again go back to my previous point, and language is one big thing. And word has it, if you go to Mali or somewhere in West Africa, you still find tribes of Gambella, because we used to trade through the tropical line and the Nubian line, and something spooky called colonization happened and everybody just stayed where they are. So language is one way of really eliminating a huge part of a perceived difference. I'm not talking about, there's always difference in culture, language, everything, but a difference in humanity. Because that's one thing that makes us the same. Like, we're all human and we have the same needs, we have to eat and everything. We need peace. So through education, what we can promote is we can promote creatively again, in the context of, when I promote the culture of Afar to a Harari kid, it will be in the context of the Harari kid, the way that he would understand it, but without losing the essence of what the actual culture of the Afar is. By the same token, you could do the same for intertribally, but also internationally, like Ghana with Ethiopia, South Africa with Algeria, through and through. And kids are very, intuitive, and they're very open for learning, and they're curious. So there's so many ways that you can inject that knowledge creatively, either whether it's infographics, whether it's through games, just representation in general of all tribes. Somebody showed me the other day the first ever illustration of a baby while it's still in his mother's womb, but the baby was painted black. And in all of my anatomy books, I've never seen that.
Wow.
Have you?
No.
Exactly. It sounds so foreign, right?
I know.
But isn't it weird that? Exactly. So by the same way, you can represent so many elements of a culture and their role in peace. Could be Ashenda, it could be Barti Barti, the Harari culture, could be anything basically. In religious holiday, non-religious holiday, anything. And if you remember, I think some years ago, my sister also wrote a children's book, which is coming to life now, but it's about this young kid that traveled all across Ethiopia and met all the 80-something tribes, and each chapter, it has 80-something chapters, and each chapter is like his experience in one tribe. And his name was Lungo, and she named it after me, actually. That was my childhood name. It meant the tall one. So everywhere he goes, every chapter has like an illustration of that tribe, the language they speak, and a description, but it's a children's story.
Yeah.
There are some really nice animators and gamers that are making games like Qetselaworq, which is basically like picking cow dung, but it's a mobile game. But it's a culture all across Ethiopia. So this is what education is, and you teach them happiness. You know, this tribe is not different or unhappy or non-peaceful because they do something different from you or they speak differently from you. Just amplifying the positives and injecting that into the youth is the education part, and the creativity comes into how you communicate that information.
When you said that, I remembered of a song. It's not really a song, it's something that fella had actually said. I think I'm going to put that on, and it's about language.
We were not even allowed to speak our country's language in schools, and they called the language they called our own languages vernacular.
We have to fight for freedom. We have to fight for liberty. We have to fight for justice. We have to fight for happiness.
How does AAPI intend to make an innovative contribution to peace education and advocacy in Africa through creative thinking and the creative arts?
This goes back to the ever so expanding and progressive and exponentially growing transformation of the world and Africa in general. So this is where innovation comes, because you need to innovate in order for you to be heard.
Right.
You need to be relatable. You need to be palatable, easy to understand. And you need to go with the ways of the world. If it's right now, it looks technology is taking over. If that's what it takes, then we need to invest in technology and do what we can contextually. I mean, to be able to contextualize the information that we're trying to convey and the promotion of peace through technology. The other innovation is, innovation is such a vast term. The other thing is, what are the population groups that we're thinking of? So if it's in general organizations and, whether governmental or individuals or investors or non-governmental organizations and institutions or schools, then we need to innovate and work what their yearly agenda is or 5-year agenda is. If it's a certain young group of people that we're focusing on, like it could be a youth organization or youth council, then we need to be able to innovate in a way that our messages or our projects are implemented integrally with the realm of that company, with that youth organization. If it's a religious organization, it also has to be innovated. For example, with the religious organization, we could very easily be talking about the positive aspects of, or the cultural diplomacy of religion among societies and how that promotes peace. It could be on holidays or whatever. So that is basically what the biggest assignment or homework is going to be, innovating certain ways. But we have, even right now, with such a small team, we're very dynamic and we're doing all of these homeworks. But as soon as we get our registration and when we get to hire more people, I'm sure it's going to be a vast network of young people that are going to come up with ideas that help us innovate ways of cultural diplomacy for peace.
Do you plan on going into any schools?
Yes, we do. A lot of people, arguably these days, would say the only way to sustain world peace is to work on the next generation.
Exactly. In order to do that, you have to go into
schools.
Yeah.
And again, comes back to starting from language to integrating different aspects of different cultures and different tribes and countries into people's children's minds. Basically, it all comes down to making them believe that differences are beautiful.
Exactly.
And not everybody's the same.
How does API get their funding? Now, you did say you worked with the AU,
Yeah.
but when it comes to country-wise,
Yeah.
how does the Ethiopian government assist you or work with you?
Yeah.
Do you intend on
Yeah.
working with them?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in terms of funding or not just funding, but in general, working with either the Ethiopian government or anybody, towards the end of January or early February, depending on the schedule, there's going to be our first training of peace ambassadors, training of trainers actually. So these are going to be peace ambassadors. So one could be you.
How do you pick the peace ambassadors? Actually, that's going to be my next question.
We just roll out into all the artists that we know,
Okay.
all the teachers, and whoever is willing to come will come. And they'll be trained about what cultural diplomacy is, what arts for peace is, what cinema for peace is, theater for peace, agriculture for peace, what generally API stands for. And delegates from the other African API branches will also come, ambassadors will also come. So that will be a very great opportunity to bring all stakeholders together, including potential funders, government officials that could help us with paperwork and everything. And all of those will come together and we'll have them in one room. And they will see all the agendas that we are trying to create. And through that, when we eventually create an agenda, let's say mental health for peace, for example, it could be an NGO that's already working on mental health, and that will definitely help us pull funders and investors into the API world. And because we already have a 2-year action plan, and as soon as we get the funding for those 2 years, we're going in line with the Agenda 2063 of the African Union, and silencing the guns campaigns and all of these. So we can plug in all those funders into any of the agendas that we want.
Yeah.
So API does not plan on becoming a sole organization that does everything. So we might get a bunch of funding that we want to work on, but we might be, working on other things or under capacity. So we also plan on partnering with people, like outsourcing these things, but it will be under the guiding principles of API, but the main thing is that the job is done and people endorse this movement for peace, and the whole of Africa will eventually endorse it as well.
So let me invite you to one song. I'm going to take you to Cuba and Kingston. Enjoyed that song?
I did.
It's one of my favorites.
I did.
I love the
this
video,
song.
the way they recorded
Yeah.
Jamaica and Cuba and kind of
Side by side.
exactly and blended them. So I have 2 more questions for you, and we'll be done. How does API intend to promote long-lasting peace and inculcate the culture of peace and non-violence in the minds of Africans, or in the minds of Africa?
We're lucky. You know why? Because we live in the age of information, and there's so many outlets. We need a very solid communication strategy. How do we communicate what we're doing, what we stand for? How do we, like from a 30, 60-page company document, how do we trickle it down to one meme? To the very least, or one page, one post on Facebook, and this kind of interview on TV. And also when the job is actually being done, when we're doing the footwork of going to sub-regions of Ethiopia and talking to communities, and when we take those pictures, videos, and when we come here and we have a plenary discussion and we report on the outcomes and we follow up, and how do we communicate the networking that we've built, the organizations that we're partnering with. And I think communicating because I am very confident about the dedication that we had from the team and the commitment that we have from our partners, including the African Union and the Ethiopian government, because ultimately everybody wants peace. After that, I really think communication is a huge part of it. Our attention span in general is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So we have to work in a way where we capture the audience, but for the simple fact that we're conveying a message of peace through arts. And in the meantime, I think we also need to work on the artists, We need to make some sort of an understanding with the artists that we work with, the peace ambassadors that we work with, in carrying our name everywhere. And whenever they do a commercial event or a commercial art piece, whether it's music or a book or a painting, whatever it is, also to think of peace and how you can convey the message of peace. And it's a very exciting, I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to be challenging, it's going to be challenging. But through the dedication that we have and the commitment that we have, through really, really reliable partners and people that believe in peace, and through the children, the youth, and the schools that we're going to be teaching peace in, amplifying indigenous cultures of peace and conflict resolution, and amplifying the importance of health in peace, mental health in peace, and amplifying the positive outcomes as well, and using good examples.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the Africa that we see in mainstream media, but the unseen Africa. Doesn't have to be buildings and shiny things, but you could go to, you know, there's so much happiness in the rural side. You go, what, 30 kilometers out of Addis and you already can see it, you know. So by amplifying those and documenting properly and conveying that message and showing what we're doing properly to the world, by the same scale that all these commercial things are catching up to, you know, reaching the people, we can also reach the people and expand the network and create as many ambassadors as we can and use our African network. We have more than 30 countries that have API. We're bigger than we can be bigger than anybody. So yeah, you make an imprint, a stamp in everybody's mind that there is an organization that works exclusively on peace. Throughout all sectors, in all sectors.
It's beautiful. I wish you luck.
Thank you.
I wish you luck. Do you think it's possible to have an Africa fit for all, where justice, peace and security prevails?
Absolutely.
Hallelujah.
It's like I said, you know, a street secret. The images are always there if you Google it, borderless Africa, what used to be. If you read a few African studies books, you read about the tribes in South Sudan and Gambela and West Africa and up and down, then you understand the route that people used to follow for trade. You go a little bit into linguistics and you find similarities in words and architecture. Everything is telling us that we all used to be the same people. The sharing of skills, language, culture is always going to be there as long as people travel for whatever reasons. That's how mixed people are born as well. So eventually that goes to show you, yes, you know, some people from modern politics or new ways, new world order, you can call it, will tell you that only works if there were 1 million people in the world. Now there are 7 billion people. But ultimately 7 million or 10 people in the world, there's always going to be differences and people tend to look onto those differences. But we have had, throughout history, we've had excellent examples of how we managed to live with our differences.
Exactly.
And not everybody, not every politics, not every government has to be the same. But we can at least travel freely, trade freely, communicate freely, and be at peace with our identity and have self-love for who we are as opposed to who we think we want to be.
We want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's accepting of who you are and
It
how
all
he
comes
made
down.
you. Yeah. I would like to say thank you
No,
to Michael Bahiru and
thank you.
for giving us this opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with you about API. We're going to close with Aloa's song Ethiopia. She is half Ethiopian, half Egyptian. So thank you everybody for staying with us on this new Pan-African show called Africa. Thank you very much. Till next time. Goodbye.
You know it come from Ethiopia.